Hey everybody, welcome back to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and I just can't get used to women on the bridge. And I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
I'm Gooey Fame, and my brain is throbbing right now.
We have returned to explore the inspirations behind your favorite episodes of Star Trek, but sometimes, just sometimes, we look at how Trek has influenced itself. And today we're looking at the first ever Trek story and how it inspired an entire season of Star Trek Discovery, and specifically a singular episode that returns us to the barren world of Talos 4.
You can hear the humming noises of the blue plants right now.
Yeah. It inspired all that, but it also inspired an entire series, which will be coming out someday if this COVID thing ever blows over. Yeah, but made the joke before, but I think it still applies that it's probably the longest pilot to pick up series length in history. Over 50 years.
That's good. I don't think I've heard that from you. So
yeah,
it was worth it.
Drop a pilot in 1964? No thanks. Wait a minute, let me see that again. It's 54 years later. So
well, I was kind of thinking about it too, because like Pike, we're jumping ahead here, but Pike, he's kind of a blank slate, So yeah. Like it makes actually a lot of sense if you're like, we want to kind of set it in a familiar area, and with some characters, but like it's kind of new, like Pike and Number One and all that, like. We know they exist, but we know weird things about them. Like, you can't get used to women on the bridge, but
well,
we really don't know his personality totally. So like, it made sense as a character to bring into Discovery.
It had to be kind of scary, but also exciting at the same time for Anson Mount as well to have such a blank canvas to draw on. And all he has to do is just, are you salt and pepper and kind of smoldery? Okay, got that. Now what's your character? Like, where are you going to go with it? And it's also, I say blank slate, but Pike is a character who has been fleshed out incredibly in, tie-in media, comic books, novels, and stuff like that. Like, so for a large part of the audience, we are no stranger to Captain Pike, but now Anson Mount has to sort of canonize, if you will, what he is like.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that as we move on in the show. Holding on to the Anson Mount part of that conversation, though, I did want to talk about a little news before we get started today. And Anson Mount announced that he is joining the board of directors for METI. This is the Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence, sort of a spin-off of SETI, which is, of course, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So while SETI spends a lot of its time searching for signals from other stars, other galaxies, looking for the evidence of intelligent life, METI is occupied with sending messages and the messaging from Earth to potential alien civilizations that we can meet.
Wow, I didn't know he was he's that hands-on with it.
He's, I don't know a lot of his backstory, but he is an eclectic guy. He does a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
And
I don't know anything about him, actually.
Well, we can get into that a little later, too, because I met him and had a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And I didn't learn, like I said, his backstory, but there's a lot of things that he is into that you wouldn't expect from, like, oh, it's the cowboy guy from that TV show.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I assume that he's not, involved in the the day-to-day science part of it. But
sure.
He is going to be something of a messenger or an ambassador to the public at large about this important effort. Well, what are your feelings on saying, "Hey, we're here, aliens"?
Yeah, I say why not? It can't hurt. I mean, depends
all
on
the movies that Anson Mount probably read for would seem to disagree with you, but of course those are movies.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek would disagree, I guess. Well,
yes,
some of the time, unless you say hi to like the Borg or something.
Yeah, right.
But I'm to believe one of our closest planets is Vulcan, right? So we need to figure out where they are. Where are they? We got less than 50 years until they're supposed to show up. right?
So like there's a news story a couple years ago, and like a lot of our talk about The Cage today, which is like one of the most well-documented pilot creations in history, we're not going to have all the facts. This is not really a fact show. It's an anecdotal, sort of comedic look at Star Trek. So don't get mad at us because we get facts wrong. But there was a story a couple years ago about them finding a planet. So there's a star that is said to be where Vulcan is or around there. And I think Gene sort of elaborated on it as the years went by. But basically he said, like, yeah, this star is supposed to be Vulcan. And it's, I don't know, 35, 40 light years away. And so, of course, now we're looking for extrasolar planets, and they turned their sort of extrasolar planet detecting thing towards that, and they found planets around that star. So there is a Vulcan out there, which has a solar system. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe we should be trying to aim things in that direction. Yeah,
it's looking good. I think there's you know what? There's probably some of the conspiracy theories about like alien encounters. I think like a quarter of them are probably true. I think Tom DeLonge has the documents.
Yeah, right.
And he's just trying to get them out there.
Yeah. I love the fact that who would be the best and most trustworthy, best reputation person that could sign on? Obama. If President Obama's next book was aliens are real, and I believe in them, I think that
forward
that would really
by
help.
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, right. Not that there's anything wrong with Tom DeLonge or Dan Aykroyd, but you know they're sort of fringy guys already.
They give off crank vibes, you know.
Yeah, yeah. If Barack Obama partnered with George W. Bush and they're trying to tell you, I think there's aliens out there. Yeah, we might have something there.
There's no red states. There's no blue states. There's just the alien
green states.
The green, yeah, the gray states.
It's all about aliens. Yeah. Another news, a little bit of sad news that connects directly to this that I wanted to bring up is that Herb Solow died recently, and he was, at the time of the development and purchase of the original series, he was one of the executive producers at Desilu Studios.
Oh.
And so he oversaw the development of Star Trek, and in that role as a producer also, you know, contributed some creative ideas and development to it, and was known for that. And he also worked on other stuff. He was at Desilu. He was instrumental in helping Mission Impossible and Mannix also get developed and sold. And so he's known for that. He went on to do other things as well, but that's kind of what people remember him for. And he wrote a great tell-all book called Inside Star Trek, which is all about his years working with Gene and Gene Kuhn and developing the original Star Trek series.
Oh, wow. You said he just passed away? Well, yeah.
At the age of 89, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, rest in peace, Herb.
Yeah, it's we killed him. I guess I didn't know that we were going to be doing this on near the weekend that he passed away, but it's too bad. But yeah, by all accounts, he's a nice guy. If you read the book, there's a lot of great information, and I think you have to take some of it with a little bit of a grain of salt,
sure.
because I was thinking about this, like as a producer, your entire job is to get credit for what you do, right? Like if you aren't seen as the man who brought Star Trek to TV, then why are they going to let you work on the next thing that they want to bring to TV, right? So
right.
And plus you're kind of the boss. Like everybody goes to you with the budget stuff and the hiring and the personnel stuff. And so you get used to being the guy where the buck stops. And so almost all of his anecdotes end with him coming out on top, you know, or somebody being like, oh, they were doing something crazy. And I was like, why don't you just do this? And they're like, you're a genius. And I was like, well, that's what I'm here for, you know? And so, I'm assuming like most of what he says is true, but it's exciting and informative look at that time, which is a time when they just made this show and it was a crazy idea and they went and did it. And it's cool to see the faith that he had in it. Of course, the faith that Gene had in it and the other people that worked on the show, just they really wanted to make this show happen.
Yeah, that sort of thought kind of came by my mind watching, you know, The Cage was just like, because it's, you know, not it's not totally how Star Trek is now. And I was just imagining, like the concept of just Star Trek as, just some show, just some pilot or whatever. And it's come a long way, I guess.
Well, we can get into that right now with our featured subject for today's show, and we're doing these in order of inspiration. So we start in March of 1964, when Gene Roddenberry drafted a pitch document entitled Star Trek Is, ellipses, which laid out his idea for a primetime science fiction series that would feature adult characters exploring the galaxy and facing down injustice in an anthology-type format. It would be the first series of its kind, as science fiction on the nascent medium of TV had up to that point been mostly for younger viewers. The concept would go under changes and development, and it would lead to the filming of a pilot introducing us to Captain Christopher Pike and the crew of the USS Enterprise and their adventure on a mysterious planet. The pilot was presented to NBC, who rejected it as, quote, too cerebral, unquote, and against normal convention, a second pilot was commissioned. That was called Where No Man Has Gone Before, and that was accepted by NBC, and the rest is history. But there was something about that point in time, the cool and engrossing characters, the mystery of Talos 4, that would send Trek writers and creators back again and again to the Enterprise's first 5-year mission, a mission we see in The Cage.
Yeoman?
Yes, sir.
I thought I told you that when I'm on the bridge, I
That you wanted the reports by 0500. It's 0500 now, sir.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
She's replacing your former yeoman, sir.
Now, she does a good job, all right. It's just that I can't get used to having a woman on the bridge. No offense, Lieutenant. You're different, of course.
I never got, when I was a kid, I knew, like, who Christopher Pike was, and I remember that Nurse Chapel had black hair for some reason, and I never really worked out what the Cage was. And, of course, as, people know, like, later on, when they had an idea but also needed to save some money, they took the footage that they had from The Cage and they reworked it into the 2-part episode The Menagerie for the original series.
Yeah, they do keep coming back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that must be where I first saw those images or picked up on that. But then I became aware that there was there's this a pilot, which is of course the TV show they make to see if they make more TV shows, like Jules says in Pulp Fiction, and and that, The Cage in full form was never seen until, in, I think, the early aughts when it went to streaming services. Up until then, there was a black and white or a reel-to-reel version that would get shown at cons sometimes, but people never really saw it. And it's weird because, when you cut out things, it used to be when you cut out things, when you don't show things, when you scrap things, you never want anybody to see those things ever again. But maybe it's just the advent of DVD and the idea of deleted scenes or unrated versions where people get this thirst for no, show me something that they wanted to take out of this movie that I love so much, And I guess that just led to people being more excited about stuff. Of course, Star Trek fans have a voracious appetite for what they love anyway. But yeah, eventually the Cage was available to watch.
Well, it's already being dangled out in front of you with the Menagerie, right? So you just, I think naturally you're I want to see this whole thing out of in context,
whether or not it's any good. And when I hear that the NBC executives said too cerebral, it's I feel that, but it's not like Trek is, the original series is not kind of cerebral.
Yeah, that's true, especially when the next episode that they produce is Where No Man Has Gone Before. I guess that does have that's got some action and stuff like that in it.
It does have, it's got a little more action, but it's literally about a guy and I guess a girl becoming these cold, cerebral, godlike beings.
Yeah. Original series is definitely cerebral still, but I do think compared to this, it does feel when I was watching this, I know it did feel they I think they wanted to jazz it up a little bit, you know?
Yeah, you can feel that going from the cage to We're No Man. But I mean, compared to like, modern Trek, like Discovery or something, like this is positively autistic. Like there is barely any emotion at all. And they call like number one a sort of cold computer-like character, but everybody is basically just very straight-faced, very stiff upper-lipped.
That's true, yeah.
Pike's probably got the biggest sort of emotional arc in that. As we begin this episode, he is complaining to the doctor about how he's kind of sick of being a space captain. He like doesn't want to do this anymore.
That's like when I was thinking about that, that's the scene that made me think it, because it felt very like, it felt kind of mature, like a mature scene, because it's like he's got a little bar and he's like mixing him a drink and he's talking about hating. I was like, your introductory to this show is like a guy talking about hating being in space, basically.
What a dumb concept. I hate this. Yeah.
But
and Dr. Boyce has got to give him a little Dr. Feelgood.
Those kind of like moments, I feel like at least with like the original series, I feel like you get that similar, not the same sentiment, but a similar kind of vibe. Like, I think of the scenes in the Star Trek movies where, like in like Wrath of Khan or whatever, where Kirk gets the birthday gift and they kind of have this like, he's like lamenting about his age or whatever. I think about like that kind of vibe coming through in like the movies, like a more, just that tone. But, in the show, I feel like usually, even when they have some serious conversations, it's usually a little bit more fun, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Where it's like, this didn't feel fun at all, I liked it. I did like the scene, but it was not fun with a capital F,
I think that what works about this, and I think you see this going into something like Star Wars or post, Rocket Man, Captain Video type sci-fi, is that it's the characters themselves are unimpressed with their situation. Like, it seems more real to the audience because Pike feels like a total functionary and just, he just hates his amazing life in space.
Yeah.
And you get that in like Star Wars too, where it's like they've got speeders and they've got droids and stuff, but it's like, oh, this droid's a piece of junk. It's like, are you crazy? Like droid speaks 6 million languages and you want to throw it away. Like the fact that they are non-impressed with their world, just grounds it a lot. And, the idea of like a captain who's just like, I don't know, I'm hitting middle age here. I don't think I'm having fun anymore. Why am I doing this? I want to go home. Like immediately you're like, oh yeah, okay, I understand this guy. Like I feel for this guy.
Yeah, it's less whimsical, which it's kind of a fine line you want to toe, because in Star Trek you want to be shown things that are whimsical and will like excite you and blow your mind or whatever, but like and like you want the characters to be fascinated by it and stuff too at times, but like if there can be too much of that too at times.
They lay the groundwork early on when we see the ship in flight as the show opens, and then we zoom in to kind of weirdly into the top of the ship, I guess establishing that the bridge is at the very top of the ship. That's where they are.
It's okay. And so that's how it's always been. I feel like I've watched this before and I don't know. I didn't remember that happening. So it kind of like shocked me.
I was surprised that they didn't try to do something like that in If Memory Serves. And they don't.
Yeah.
I don't think. Sometimes I tune out like when they're showing the ship from the outside, but I don't think they do. But some sort of homage. And the first words that we hear in the Star Trek franchise are, "Check the circuit!" from our old-timey conductor character, Spock, who was still sort of dialing in the character of Spock at that point.
Yeah. He's a little less exciting at this point. He just looks like a weird little imp guy,
Yeah,
not little,
right.
But...
Yeah. And also not totally, emotionless. And I think they worked the balance of the characters out a lot better too, because you've got number one, who's a woman, but the twist is that she's, kind of calculating and emotional. It's like, all right, well, that's just Spock. Like, I get why when they rebooted this, they went, not only because Majel Barrett was playing the role, and the producers didn't necessarily like having Gene Roddenberry's girlfriend running around. You fold those two characters together. And so I think at this point, Nimoy is still looking for a kind of hook for Spock, because we haven't really nailed down that he's, this calculating, logical creature.
They're just like, we need a alien guy, but that's all they got.
Yeah, you be alien guy, and sound like an old-timey train conductor sometimes. And also just be the guy who's just kind of keeping everything running. So you've got Pike, and then you've got number one, but you're the guy who's like, he's kind of a Scotty figure almost in this. He's sort of like twisting all the dials and kind of looking at all the stuff.
He was like one of the least. It's definitely an interesting thing, like the evolution of the character, but like just as watching it this time, I've seen it a couple times. Like he was I didn't really clue into like whatever he was doing this episode, because it just wasn't that interesting to me from a pure entertainment purpose. I was like, yeah, and Spock's there. He's just kind of a blank slate right now.
Yeah, he's not really a big part of it, and and of course none of his backstory was written, and it would be written in practice, while they're just going through the process of making the next 3 years of TV. But it's kind of, if next week was a Spock episode, you kind of wonder what it would even be.
Yeah, that's fair.
They didn't check the circuit, and he's mad about it.
Yeah.
We get a lot of things in this where you see how the kind of technobabble or the sort of mise en scène of the series is kind of coming together. Initially while they're there's this long sequence at the very beginning. Let's introduce people to our exciting show, and people just like watching the Starfield, and there's a woo woo, and they're just watching it, and it just keeps going. But we figure out that this is a signal. It's like a distress signal that they have picked up. And they talk about their meteorite beam, which I assume is a deflector type beam, when they're traveling at high warp. It's clearing the lane for them. They also talk about their drive being a time warp drive. And if you ever wonder why they call it a warp drive, it's because it warps space, but it's also sort of warping time. They're talking about going faster than the speed of light. The what's it called? The Columbia is the freighter, right? The Columbia presumably couldn't go faster than light, and so now the Deep Space Exploration vessel Enterprise has gotten out to where the Columbia has crashed, and that's why, like, when they find the survivors, they're like, "Oh, we'll take you home, and you won't believe how fast we can get you home now."
Oh, yeah. So it's
no 18-year trip out for you.
There's a little bit of excitement there for the people. Look at what we can do. Yeah. Okay.
And we talk, there's a mentions of Orions and things like that. Like there's the details are drawn in, and I get the impression from Gene that he was never really like a detail guy,
Yeah.
If you read his pitch doc, the Star Trek it's he's just pitching essentially a Outer Limits type series. Like some of the pitches, have nothing to do with traveling through space, being a space captain. Although I guess nominally that's what he wanted. He originally wanted to call it the Captain Gulliver, because he saw Gulliver's Travels, as kind of a template for what they'd be doing, which is, I think gets into the final product of Star Trek. Like they go to different planets. Mm-hmm. There's something going on the planet that represents something that goes on in, real life. And I think probably Herb Solo was like, Gulliver's a little on the nose. You got to pick a different name there.
Sure. Though, I mean, it does seem like, it doesn't seem like he was like crafting like a specific world or like lore, the pitch is more like, here's some fun things that could happen with this cast of characters. Yeah.
And then later on when, other writers would work on it and, DC Fontana would go, oh no, the thing about the Vulcans is that they come from this planet, and she would fill all that out, and Gene Kuhn would, create the Klingons, and we would just sort of go forward like that. But I think that Gene is just like, I don't know, like they didn't even know what year it was set in. He didn't even have like a specific idea. And I feel like now if you were pitching to a producer and they're like, what do you got? And you go, it's the future. When in the future? I don't know. It's like, but when the cities fall, it's like, yeah, but is there like a year? Or, I feel like they would need more from you. But in 1964, you can just walk into a thing and go, "It's the future." They're like, "I'm listening." Like that's fine.
That does reflect now, because I mean, you do see people now get very bent out of shape about lore discrepancies between like Picard and Discovery and like Next Gen. Like, oh, they said this, but like back on this show they said this, and it's like, well, even then, like, we like fans of like Next Gen or original series, when there's like a continuity error, it's just like a funny thing we laugh at, like, oh yeah, they hadn't figured it out yet, but like now it's something that people get like pissed at.
Now you do an Enterprise two-parter to show how the Klingons got their smooth foreheads or whatever.
That too. But I mean, just like one minor like weird dialogue in Discovery of something that doesn't totally line up, and it's like, look at this random episode from season 3 of Next Gen where it contradicts this in a minor way, and like I'm gonna lose my mind about it.
They're fixing everything that doesn't matter, and not the things that do matter. Like, why aren't women allowed on the bridge, and why turnabout intruder can't women be starship captains? Like,
oh yeah,
you really need to like I don't care if somebody's green or now they're blue or whatever, but like, why was there huge sexism in the future?
I was thinking about that, because so the cage isn't canon, but the menagerie would be, right? Like,
that's a great question. That is a really good question, because unless we see in the development of Strange New Worlds, if they cast a Dr. Forgot his name already, but John Hoyt's character, if we see the little Chekhov-y type kid who's like, if we have those characters on there, then I think we can just take it that the cage is canon.
Okay. Because I was like, are they just straight up like, because that was what I was talking about with like Pike kind of being a blank slate. It's like, well, I don't really remember if they show the clip in the menagerie where he's like, I can't get used to women on the bridge or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably cut that out, or I don't know, maybe not. Because I can't remember either.
Because that actually is like it's not like a big thing, but it is like weird to think about, because then he goes on to like be on Discovery, and it's like, well, I guess he got over that.
Yeah,
he does not seem bothered at all. Which
he
is kind
switched
of
his prejudice to holograms. Now he doesn't want holograms.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe the cage was a life-altering experience, though, too.
Well, I think it definitely was, and I mean, we can kind of give away the next part of the show, but like, I think it definitely was, because the Pike that we see that Jeffrey Hunter is giving us is like a type of military man. He's reserved. He does his job, but it is getting to him, and he seems to be kind of fed up with. He doesn't see the wonder of what he does anymore, and then this happens to him, and then 3 years later in season 2 of Discovery, we meet Pike, and the guy's re-energized. He's got a new lease on life. He's ready to, he's hit it. Let's get out there. Let's do this job that I love so much. So this must be part of that transformation for him.
Well, so I mean, the show they're making, it's going to take place in that time, so maybe we'll see that, perhaps.
Yeah, I want to see a kind of bitter Anson Mount. It's like, boy, the Doctor's been going to the captain's quarters quite a lot.
But I feel like
I hear a lot of tinkling of glasses when he's in there.
I feel like the way they're kind of introducing him, and going along with like he's kind of a blank slate, is like, I feel like they're kind of presenting him in like to make you nostalgic, to like think of like that Kirk time, but he doesn't have the Kirk baggage, not to be a Kirk type, but just like you're like what do you call it? You're like the prototype of a Starfleet captain, Like he sort of has that feeling. So like, I don't think they're going to explore his like cage, like being grumpy about space character in the show they're going to make. you know.
Well, I hope they explore something, because it occurs to me that we don't get this with Spock because, as we'll see in Memory Serves, the second season of Discovery is preoccupied with Spock's history with Burnham. But as far as Pike and Number One go, we spend a whole season with them and we don't actually learn all that much about them, except for Pike is Space Daddy. He's really nice. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that Number One, or Una, she has a name, is a little more arch and a little more sarcastic than we saw in The Cage. And that's all we really learn. So I think we really do need to learn more about them and mess them up a little bit and get into their backstories and their pasts. And we get a little blip from Pike in that one episode about how his dad was studied religions or whatever. We need more things like that in order for them to. We need to create some baggage for them, so they can be characters.
Yeah, but I think they're gonna retcon their personalities slightly, because they already kind of have, But yeah, we'll see.
It's okay that I don't hate Majel Barrett's portrayal of Number One in this, but she does need to have a personality.
Yeah.
Period. So I think what they're doing with Rebecca Romaine so far isn't bad. It's just got that feeling of, I don't know. It's okay to have one character that doesn't think they're hilarious. I just feel like in all the new Trek shows, and it's just kind of like the way that they write TV these days. Like every single person has some kind of quip, and it's like, just in real life, there are people who aren't offering quips because they don't think that they're just some kind of hilarious jokester.
Yeah,
that's what Chekhovs were for. That's what Sulus were for in the old days.
Yeah. There's that, and there's the whimsy. Sometimes I feel like we can turn down the whimsy a little.
Oh,
bit.
Yeah. The two-parter based on Gilbert and Sullivan that's coming up in our future.
Yeah.
Where they go back in time to stop Gilbert and Sullivan from, yeah.
It's slightly off topic, but I was watching whatever, as of recording this, the most recent episode of Discovery. And I get they're 900 years in the future. And again, we're supposed to be seeing stuff they've never seen before, but when they're showing off the bridge crew of the Discovery, all the new tech, it felt like watching a bunch of kids at space camp being like, wow, ooh, ah. And I'm like, I don't know. They seem like children to me. I don't know. They don't seem like, military officers, I guess. But now I'm starting to sound like all the cranks who hate Discovery.
Those kids at space camp, they had it rough, and it was all that Steven Spielberg's wife could do to keep them in line.
Yeah, I don't know. I just I don't know. I just think there's
a space camp in a while. I want to cornhole. That's not what I want to do. Jesus Christ. I want to buttonhole a couple 18-year-olds or maybe 16-year-olds and just go, all right, now you're going to see what I had to watch when I was a kid. Space camp. And they'd just be like, what is this shit?
I think, you're going to Clockwork Orange them,
but not, ironically, not with Clockwork Orange. I'm going to make them watch Space Camp.
Yeah.
With, what's her name?
I've never actually seen it. I just know.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So maybe we can work that into an episode.
Kate Capshaw. There you go. Whatever.
There you go.
We see in this episode, we see there are a lot of great cosplay potential here. Do you know what I mean? When they kind of have a lot of costume changes for one episode, and when they beam down to the planet, they get their cool little away landing party jackets. They have laser guns instead of phaser guns, and just a bit of trivia: those are actually made from camera mounts.
The guns
at the time.
Wow.
Yeah. If you look at them, they've got a sort of bend in them or whatever, and so those are just repainted mounts, swivel mounts for cameras.
That's really awesome.
They did have a good amount of money for this pilot at the time, but they also were always looking to sort of kind of cut corners wherever they could.
Yeah, and that makes sense because I feel like in Star Trek, honestly, the phasers, at least from like Starfleet, are always kind of, you almost want them to kind of blend in. Like, you don't want them to stick out much anyway. So like, why spend the time making something crazy with it when it's kind of just like this little remote that basically that you're holding in your hand?
Right. Or like make a big phaser rifle, to feature on the poster and then like never actually gets used on the show.
Yeah, that's
or
true.
Something like that. Yeah. And we also see, when we meet the Telosians, they put Pike in their little cage. And the Telosians are fascinating because they really wanted to do something strange that hadn't been done. And so they cast female actors and then used, male voices in voiceover and in the telepathic voices. Yeah. And that little thing where their heads are pulsating, it's so cool, but it's such a simple effect. There's just somebody down there off camera that's just, pumping a little air bulb or something like that and just making them kind of rise and fall.
Yeah, it looks really cool still, I think. You kind of see the seams or whatever,
Yeah.
But it looks
well.
it's
they didn't
cool.
know we'd be watching it in HD.
Yeah, that's fair. To give them some credit, though. They at least when they had like those added effects later of zooming, into the bridge and all that stuff. Like,
yeah, right. Yeah,
that makes up for
it. Yeah, they went to all that trouble to like remaster the effects for TOS, but we'll just give the cage a pass. They're still kind of throwing things at the wall. When he's in the menagerie, we catch a glimpse of some other creatures. One looks like the Mirror Universe San Diego chicken or something like that.
Yeah,
they're still kind of kind of trying
cool.
things out. They don't really know where they're going with it, but it's there's just a lot of like invention. There's a lot of imagination kind of on screen, and I think that's one of the things that made the NBC guys go, not this, but like kind of like this.
Yeah,
let's do it again.
Well, there's also just in general a lot of concepts. Like I feel like there's like 8 different Star Trek episodes that the premise of it is like a morsel of this episode. You got the Telosians, right, and they've got the mind stuff, right, but then I also thought of like when the bow breaks from TNG, where it's like, oh, we need to repopulate our civilization because we forgot how to do things. Like that's there, and I don't know. There's a little stuff.
I always think of Nagilum from Where Silence Has Lease. There's a lot of godlike or powerful aliens that are like, oh, we're going to look at you. You're our little lab rat here, and we're going to
totally,
see what you can do.
Yeah. And then there's just like the basic stuff of like, oh, what's real and what's not real. There's tons of episodes of stuff like that, and traveling to like this weird castle, and I don't know. That's another thing I thought of, like you said when watching it, where it was like they really like were trying to get it all in here, like maybe to impress, or maybe they just thought like this was like a good like the story they wanted to tell, but it felt like we got to get all this out there.
We got to pack it solid. When you think about it, like every episode of TNG does kind of do that, though. Usually, like by showing you like the world, digging in a little bit to the world that they've got, but like letting you know that world is there. So it won't. Star Trek will often like mention things, and sometimes it's a throwaway reference, like we're going to like planet, Regula 1 or whatever, and it doesn't really matter what it is, but they'll mention things like I think the Breen were mentioned before we ever saw the Breen on DS9, and it isn't necessarily that they like knew, ooh boy, in 3 years we're going to like reveal the Breen to the world, but it gave you this idea that this world exists and has been existing for a long time, and it isn't just some kid show where, and not, I love Lost in Space, but this week, it's a planet where everybody wears hats on their butts instead of their heads. Like it's not just some random thing. Like there is a world here that we're going to discover bit by bit as you talk about meteorite beams and laser cannons and things like that.
Totally, yeah. Though it felt like a lot of those concepts were like major plot points too,
Yeah.
So it not like I wasn't like watching this like confused or anything, but I could totally see how if you're a executive in the 60s being like, what is all of this doing?
Right. Why are they now on the cover of an Anne McCaffrey novel, and why is she wearing a Ren Fair dress, and he's fighting a Mongolian warrior? It's like, just keep watching, and it'll make sense.
Yeah, totally.
Clearly, like, you can see the same kind of beats that you would have in a series from the time, a Mission Impossible, a Bonanza, a Gunsmoke or whatever. It's like, now we're going to have a fight with maces, even though it doesn't make any sense. It's just It's a memory he's having of a fight that they had on another planet that had like lower technology, so the guys had shields and swords or whatever. Rigel 7.
It was a cool fight.
Yeah, it was. There's actually he totally kills that guy.
Yeah.
It's pretty violent. And what I love about the depiction is there's thinking about it being it's cerebral. It's not just that like literally there are giant cerebrums on some of the characters. Like there's a lot of like thoughts and things that an audience has to pick up on, because we start this out, and one of the reasons that Pike is so frustrated and so kind of over it is they just came back from this planet where presumably they didn't want to, but they got in this fight. And it wasn't like just one or two red shirts got vaporized. Like they lost like a lot of people. Like they walked into something that was like really bad. And so now he's a tough 60s man, and he's a stiff upper lip, and he's not really going to talk about it, but he's feeling this fear. And then when the Telosians put him right back in that situation, you immediately see on his face like that he's like, I don't want to do this again. Like I feel horrible about killing that guy, and here I have to go do it all over again. It's a kind of a horrible situation.
I think in general, like the world they present is less like clean as TOS or like TNG. Even though they obviously deal with like heavy subjects and stuff, it feels a little bit more. It's less utopian, maybe, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, Utopia is just the full brand of Trek now, but I think it was less of a going concern back then, for sure.
Yeah, it felt more like, well, this is our space show, So like,
right, yeah,
like the character, like I feel like you can kind of see as questionable morality, and there's just a lot of stuff like that it's a bit more, maybe edgy is a bad word, but it's kind of edgier than what I think of like the average Star Trek episode,
Yeah, it's also a situation where they take a hot American spaceman and then stick him with a hot lady who's just begging him to fuck her, like in any backdrop that he likes. So it's still a little backwards. But speaking of that hot space lady, let's talk about Susan Oliver, who is fantastic in this, and it's real sad that they couldn't like take her with or something. I would have loved to have seen Susan Oliver in like an ongoing, like recurring regular role on the show, because she is just great and was great her entire life. She was somebody who was obviously good looking, and so she would sometimes get like the wife, the girlfriend parts, but she was also because she was so talented, like a go-to for a lot of TV series for character roles and serious roles. Which means that she ended up playing like a lot of junkies and and like criminals and stuff like that on procedural shows. But yeah, she was all over TV at this time. There's a really, I won't say it's great, not because it's bad, but it's kind of low budget and it's a little slapdash. But there's a good, solid documentary about her called The Green Girl that I would suggest people watch. Yeah. She had a really interesting life. She never got married, and the documentary never goes so far to say as that she couldn't because she was gay, but I feel like the implication is maybe a little there. She was somebody who, like, a lot of the people that they interview are like friends and co-stars from the time, and it's a lot of men, and they're all like, oh, I went on a date with Susie, but I just couldn't seal the deal, couldn't make it happen. And I'm like, it might be because that's not the way it went with her, but who knows? She was also a pilot. She got her pilot's license almost on a whim and became a very accomplished pilot. She became the second woman in the world to cross the Atlantic starting from New York. Yeah.
Okay.
And she wanted to fly to Moscow, but at the last second, like the Russians were like, no, we don't want that. And so she had to land somewhere else. But yeah, she had quite an amazing life.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even know who this was, honestly. That's fascinating. yeah, she was great in this. I really liked she had one part where it's kind of a thing you've seen before, but where like Pike is talking to her and they're in the fantasy world, and she's just like insisting on like, how do you like your sandwiches or whatever, and she won't let up on that. Right. That's like one of my favorite scenes in this.
Yeah. When they're having a picnic in the lush Mojave area, which is different because of, I guess, geoforming in the future.
Sure.
And she's like, I get those headaches when you talk crazy. And then he picks up on the subtext, like, they're listening. And so later on, she's like, we can have a family. And he's like, won't the headaches be hereditary? Meaning,
yes.
If we do have kids, they'll be prisoners in this cage as well. So do we really want to do that? Yeah, I love the subtext.
Yeah.
And he's got that great future denim outfit. We have to see Anson Mount in that like future denim outfit when he's doing a little R&R on Strange New Worlds.
Right, because wouldn't that be his like ideal
that's he wants to get up on a horse and do a little riding with his chicken tuna sandwiches.
Yeah, I thought she was great in this. I thought her character was really interesting. The ending with it even too sort of goes back to what I was saying about like it feeling a little like rough around the edges compared to Star Trek, because they make hard decisions all the time, but I feel like when she's like, I want to stay, and Pike like lets her, like, I feel like an average episode of Star Trek would be about like the conflict of like trying to convince her to leave, but instead he's just like, I agreed with the decision. It's like, wow, it's a really tough call he had to make there, but he made it pretty quickly,
Yeah, and I think she's a tragic character, obviously, and it works for. I mean, it's what she wants, but it also works for Pike because he decides emphatically, this is not what I want. I want to get back to work. I don't want to just eat lotuses and just stay here. Like, I want to get out there. And so he knows that's what he wants at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I feel like, like there would be normally you could make a whole episode, I guess, about like, there's always some episode where it's like, you got to convince the people to leave where they're at and they don't want to leave, even though, it's not ideal. But instead he's just like, yeah, no, I mean, you look pretty fucked up. So I guess if you want to stay here, I get it.
Yeah. What's weird is that they don't like then in Memory Serves go, okay, but like, you are in love with Captain Pike. We have all kinds of like medical technology. Why don't you just get on the shuttle with me and Spock and we'll just take you back? Like, why did she stay there again?
It's because we must have gone ahead in time and played the advanced medical technology game and taken it out of Discovery.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was trying to think about that too, or like, I don't know, like maybe they... Yeah, because they like plastic surgery like anyone to look like a Romulan at a whim,
Right, yeah. They can do all kinds of things with faces and whatever. There is like touches, I think, of the sort of, if not utopia, the morality that we would see as being an ongoing part of this Trek franchise. Pike figures out that because these guys are kind of like brain wusses, like they can't really do anything because they've been underground for so long, and they themselves have been wrapped up in these sort of fantasies. It's their cage as well. He realizes like strong emotions, hate, like these are things that they can't abide. So this is how I can keep my mind clean and free of them. But the idea of like, I got to go around feeling hate all the time, like that doesn't feel very Starfleet, and he can't really keep it up. It's not a solution, ultimately, because he can't just feel that way all the time. They have to find another way sort of out of it.
It was cool to like see him like being so threatening and like threatening to kill the guys and stuff too. Like, I just feel like, like other captains we get, I feel like it would be an even harder sell to believe. Like, I can't imagine like Picard in that situation, I guess.
Yeah, he would. Well, he's been captured quite a bit. He would probably just, can I get a book or something? Or he would just
take for a while. Yeah, he would just be like, all right, do whatever you want.
Although they send him to hell, though. They're like, we have all kinds of punishments. And it's like, I'm in hell.
That was horrifying.
I'm literally in hell. Yeah.
That felt like another too, like that was more of a minor detail, as opposed to like a big concept that's a plot detail, but they do that and they're like a fable from your past or from your planet's past, and that felt a little bit like, oh, they're dropping some Christianity is a fable thing here.
Yeah, that we're already kind of seeing that. Yeah, I like when Pike's like, "Is your blood red? Let's find out."
Yeah,
he takes one of them hostage.
There's a lot of good one-liners about him like choking them out, or like, I don't know, he's gonna like cut their throats or something.
We're already kind of seeing the desire to incorporate sex, but also the weird kind of goofy way in which they handle it, in where the Telosians bring down like the other two female crew members, and they're like, "Okay, come on, Tutti Frutti, come on, let's go. Which one? Let's pick one." And when when number one and the yeoman like figure out like what's going on, they're like, "Wait a minute, are we getting picked for sex slaves here? What's going on?" The offspring, as in he's Adam and one of us is going to be the Eve. I don't know about this.
Yeah, I thought it was like at least interesting when they were doing it, in like the Telosians were doing it. I was like, oh, that's kind of like, it's like pretty messed up or whatever. But I was like, I guess that makes kind of for like, it's interesting. But at the ending of like, who would be Eve? That I was like,
who would have been Eve?
That's weird. that's where it crossed the line for me, I think.
Yeah. Well, the yeoman, as we're told, has unusually strong female desires. whatever that.
Even
means.
that, like, I guess the way they said it was bad, but I was like, the idea that it's like, she's into him, but that doesn't, obviously, like, when they're brought down, like, it's like, oh, you're getting what you asked for, but also it's like, not at all, like, she didn't ask for this.
Right.
That makes for, to me, at least an interesting story, but then when she's like, at the end, she's like, oh, maybe I could have been your girl. It's like, okay, calm down.
Yeah. Well, and plus she's probably, she's a teenager probably. And number one is somebody who I'd imagine in this horrible sexist original look at the Star Trek universe has fought for years to be respected by people in her position.
Well, she's not like other girls.
No. She's like the guys.
She's different. Yeah.
One of the boys. We also see near the end of the episode, we get the first episode, we get the whole let's put a phaser on overload trick that we'll see throughout the franchise, where they all kind of just decide. I like the fact that there's no real like word given. He's just like, yep. And she's like, okay. And she like twists the thing on the gun. And so now it's going to blow up. And the Telosians are like, you two crazy. You guys can go.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right. You're going to kill yourselves. Just go.
You apparently just at the drop of a hat have a suicide gun.
Yeah. Yeah. We made a mistake. We don't want breeding pairs of you. Forget it.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's, we've covered a lot. Is there anything specific that you wanted to talk to? I guess we didn't get into too many facts, but like I said, we're not really a fact show.
Yeah, no, we're having fun. Well, I liked the, again, kind of how I felt like this had a bit more of a harder edge, was like, they did explore at least the concept of like, yeah, what if he became a slave trader,
I want an episode. So I'm assuming that, I guess it's a fantasy, but I'm assuming that those two slime balls are real. So I want like an episode where he meets he went to the academy with those guys and he meets them on an episode of Strange New Worlds and just punches them out. And they're like, what? He's like, oh, they actually like being taken advantage of? What are you talking about? I never said that.
Yeah, I think a lot, like, I liked that scene. I think a lot of people would point to it and be like, wow, like, I can't believe the show is trying to say that these women like to be taken advantage of, but it's like, look at these two slime balls who are telling you that.
Like,
you believe these guys?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I liked that element of like, they're like, yeah, this guy, he's like, he obviously then is like, no, of course I wouldn't do this, but like, I don't know. I thought that was an interesting thing to explore. I just don't think, I don't think that's going to be an element to Anson Mount's version of it at all as like any of these things.
Yeah. The Telosians frame it as like the, you know, the unspoken desires of a starship captain or whatever, but like, you know, impulses and like sort of like dark desires like aren't who you are.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So in his mind, he could, you know, he's attracted to Vina and he, you know, maybe wants to have like this torrid sort of contact with her, but it doesn't, you know, he does what we want him to do, which is like, I got to get out of here. What is this? This is crazy. Like, I don't want this.
Right. It makes me think of, they kind of explore that with like Barkley with like the holodeck stuff where it's like, here's all this like weird shit he thinks about, in regards to his coworkers. But, you know, it's just like, that's just, you know, everyone's got weird stuff going on in their mind all the time.
Or something like Plato's Stepchildren when they force like Kirk to kiss Uhura, you know, like obviously like Kirk and Uhura are both like young and good looking and they probably wouldn't hate kissing each other, but it's not really their relationship.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting stuff going on there that I think there's a lot of stuff you can draw from just this episode to actually make a cool Pike show, honestly.
Yeah, and I assume that's what they'll be doing. I'm still trying to think of like, or just conceive like how they'll build up an entirely new show out of one episode. And then whatever you've done with, you know, and obviously, we can't really deal with the wheelchair years. Maybe they'll find some way to change the timeline and he won't end up, doing the whole menagerie thing.
Wasn't he having like visions about it in Discovery? I kind of don't remember.
Yes, there was an episode, sort of late in the season where he goes to the time crystal planet or whatever, and he's got to get a time crystal, and he sees a vision of what his future will be.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe he's got to get another time crystal to avoid it. Because time crystals...
Or he shoves somebody else like in the way, and then like the guy who's in the chair is just like beeping that he's not Pike. I'm not Pike. Please.
Oh, he never was. He like faked his own death.
Pike escapes. Yeah.
I want to see he fakes his own death, and then he's there in his Canadian tuxedo, just enjoying out the rest of his days.
Yeah, I feel bad for that guy, but whatever. Well, I think we did a pretty good job of covering the cage. Of course, we'll have to move on and talk about the next episode, which we'll do after this word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more backtracking.
Okay, Caliban, are you prepared to take your Sailor Noob graduation quiz?
Hana, I'm so prepared for this. I learned fluent Japanese.
Impressive.
Arigato gozaimasu.
First question. The hero of Sailor Moon is Usagi Tsukino. What does Usagi mean in Japanese?
Rabbit.
Correct.
Yes.
Next question. As Sailor Moon, Usagi and the Sailor Scouts live and go to school in what Tokyo neighborhood?
Easy. Azubu Juban.
That's right. One more correct answer and you'll no longer be a Sailor Noob. The human form of the Cardian Leshy is tasked by Ail and Ann to gather life energy. What Japanese historical period are Leshy's human forms closed from?
What?
I'm sorry, the answer was the Heian period.
Bakana!
Better luck next time. But for all the answers, listen to Sailor Noob, where we discuss the food, fashion, and culture of Sailor Moon. Wherever you get your podcasts.
Watashi wa hazukashi. Okay, we're back, and it's time to talk about the CBS Trek side of this equation. Star Trek Discovery has attempted to rewrite the DNA of Star Trek for a new millennium and a new audience, but much of the original's DNA remains in the production, even down to the original concept of the show being an anthology-like format, where audiences would visit different eras of the Star Trek universe each season on Discovery. Ultimately, the setting became fixed in the years immediately prior to Kirk's 5-year mission of the original series. And that, of course, means that somewhere out there, there's an Enterprise with Captain Pike at the helm. Fan speculation ran wild in the show's first season that the Enterprise could appear, and those desires were made manifest at the conclusion of Season 1, when the Enterprise rendezvoused with the USS Discovery. Season 2 of the show draws heavily on the world and characters established in the cage, culminating in Burnham and Spock making a trip back to the forbidden world of Talos 4 in the episode If Memory Serves.
I have seen a possible future. One that could well be determined by our actions. This could be the defining moment for multiple civilizations, millions of lives.
Show me my brother's mind.
Now, you see.
And of course, as this episode opens, and you got to do this, they say previously on Star Trek,
gosh.
And we, in one little, minute-long montage, basically go to the beginning of Star Trek and then bring it up till now. And I think it's pretty well done.
Yeah, it's like, I guess it's like you don't have to watch The Cage now, you know?
Yeah, I mean, even though everybody watching understood that already, right? And if you didn't, just seeing that little montage doesn't really help you out all that much.
Yeah, it is a weird kind of element to just throw in to the show, I guess. But I guess if you got Pike, like, what else are you going to call back to?
Yeah, I guess as the episode goes on, he does get a little more involved, and so we need to know the essential backstory.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was, I guess I didn't know what to expect when I heard they were doing this episode and what they would really do with it. And I didn't really know how to feel the first time I saw it. This second time around, I liked it. I forgot, too, that, of course, there are 3 or 4 other plots happening, in the episode. So we are still maintaining the ongoing story of season 2 of Discovery. But it surprised me how kind of conventional it is. Clearly they had a blueprint or a template, which was Burnham arrives on Talos 4, sees the singing plants, runs into Vina. Then we run into the Talosians, we do the mind stuff, and then we move on. Like it's fairly straightforward in its structure.
Yeah, definitely. They really did. They kind of they captured that vibe too of like the planet pretty well, but like made it more modern. So like that was cool, I guess. Like when she's down there and there's the plants and they sound the same.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The Talosians kind of look a little different, but like I don't know, that all that in the setting I think was a pretty good like modernization of the pilot episode or whatever.
Yeah, something that that did not surprise me, kind of expected it, was that they did not follow what the Cage did in casting of the Talosians, making it unsettling to have female actresses. They just cast guys, which is like, all right, well, there you go.
Yeah. I was like, whatever.
It's so weird on a show that has so many female characters already that they're just like, yeah, just make them dudes.
Yeah, I guess so. I was just like, they look like freaks. Like they got big heads. They look like them, I guess. Not. I guess now it's like a little. Now it's probably a little less of a thing to be like, what if a guy would like kind of look like a girl? Ooh. Wouldn't that be a little weird?
I suppose, but are they introducing the idea that there are male and female Talosians now? I guess they are.
Or like, I guess they probably just have a variety of gender presentations. I guess because like they I don't know. They seem a lot. They give off definitely a different kind of a vibe than the original ones in that regard, I guess.
They're kind of big dudes.
Yeah, he's got like a deep voice, like when I think of the original Talosians, they seem more like you're kind of like, I don't know, big-headed weird aliens, I guess. This guy,
right.
He seems a bit more stoic or something, and he's got like this deep, bassy voice.
Yeah, they're kind of chatty.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas I thought that what we were led to understand about the Talosians is that they're so like physically regressed that they're just small and kind of physically ineffective and unimposing.
I guess in this couple of years they've been working on themselves and getting jacked, or like maybe they had this one guy who's a bit more, because he's really the only one who talks, I think, right? Is like the main guy.
Yeah.
So like maybe they're just like, well, we've been saving this guy. Like he wasn't there that day that Pike was there the first time.
Right. He had the day off.
He's like, he's like kind of
the boss Telosian's back.
Yeah, he's like the alpha Telosian.
Something that I was reminded of. I haven't watched season 2 again since it aired, and I forgot about all the things that we were tracking. And one of the things that I forgot is that that Pike, takes over Discovery and tells everybody, we're going to play this straight. I want to be your captain, and be honest with me. And then over the course of the season, just learns surprising fact after surprising fact about all of his crewmates and all the weird like connections and situations they've got going on. And we get that in this episode too, where he has to pull Tyler aside and he's like, I never know what's happening on the ship. So what happened between you and Burnham? You guys were like dating or something like that. And he's like, yeah, we were dating before. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And when they're just in general, when like he's explaining like his whole deal, or like they have dialogue explaining his whole deal, it's like, oh yeah, like a lot really happened to him in just like a couple seasons or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So wait a minute. This guy was the Section 31 liaison, used to be a Klingon. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, they're talking about like your bones being grafted to, and I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This really wasn't, it personally for me wasn't enjoyable to watch. It's just,
didn't like this one?
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like, it wasn't confusing or anything, because I like, all this stuff's going on, but I was just like, kind of just like touch in on these little beats from these overarching stories of people, and I was just like, some of them I forgot, and I think is just because they were kind of, to me, not memorable. Like I just didn't think they were that interesting at the time, and I've forgotten about them since. And so it was like, oh, remember this? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I remember that, but yeah, I don't care. I wasn't interested, Something
that I forgot was that, at this point, Giorgio has been sort of tapped by Section 31 to work with them. And she was like weirdly respectful to the bosses of Section 31. Maybe at that point she felt like she needed to find a foothold in this universe, or like, sort of kowtow to authority. But she's sort of playing the good student, while the other guy, whose name escapes me, is just totally like constantly fucking up. And she's like, oh no, we'll get that done right away. And then as soon as they, turn the screen off, she's like, oh, you're really fucking this up.
I totally forgot about that other guy. And he was like the villain by the end of it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. This is the other guy. And like, yeah, I don't know. There was a line again about like a kind of a throwaway joke line about how Tyler was a Klingon with inside him or something. And like, it was just like, okay, like, it's a joke line, but it made me think about how fast things really happen on this show. And I was thinking that too with Giorgio. I was like, oh, like, to me, Giorgio Section 31, like, sounds like a premise of, like, multiple seasons of TV, But instead of just like, I guess it was, they said that was going to be, right?
It's supposed to be a show. They're working on it right now.
But yeah, to me, it was just like, she was there, and then some stuff happened, she was gone. I don't know. It just feels, everything's so, like, nothing really sinks into me. That's why I feel like it's a little bit forgettable. It's because, like, oh yeah, like, I remember that brief moment where I thought they were going this way, and instead they didn't explore it at all,
Yeah, and we also get reminded, I think it happens in the episode before, but we get reminded of the threat here, which is robot squids from the future want to destroy all sentient life. And having watched Picard more recently than season 2 of Discovery, it's like, it does really now stand out that, wow, they just really reused that plot device for a totally different series. Like two seasons of two shows of Trek, CBS Trek, involve artificial life form octopus things that want to kill everybody in the galaxy.
And I don't know, I think, most seasons we're going to get from now on are going to be about saving all sentient life as we know it, Like, I think that's just going to be what they have to do every season is save the entire universe.
The stakes have risen to that level.
So
it's hard to bring them back down.
It's just hard for me to lock in on any character and like given thing. And I get that like in like a random episode of like TNG, it's like they might explore a small facet of a character that they don't really like bring up a lot. So it's really only there in that episode, but I at least feel like it gets honed in on. Whereas like this, it's like there's just always kind of like a reminder. Like, like, here's remember this baggage that, like, this guy has? And then I never feel like it totally ever gets to somewhere where I feel, like, satisfied or, like, I understand the character or anything.
Yeah. I mean, things get lost in, like, regular Trek or quote-unquote regular Trek. Remember, like, when Geordi had a real problem with women? Well, problem. He had a problem talking to the women, and then like the energy being guy like touched his head and gave him like a boost of confidence, like reorganized his personality.
Right.
And like it's not. I think Geordi goes on a date or two after that. I think that's the Leah Brahm stuff, but it doesn't ever really come back. That like, did that guy like rewrite your brain? Like they never really bring that up again.
Yeah, I guess that goes back to what I was saying earlier of like maybe, and I'm not losing my mind about it, but, there being kind of the same discrepancies in the older series, and it's just, like, taken as, like, well, that just gets, tossed aside, it's not a big deal, but it's just hard, it makes it harder for me with this to, like, just, like, oh, I'm gonna dip back into If Memory Serves, and, There's a really on the nose line about Saru where it's like, oh yeah, like before you evolved, you might have made a different call. You wouldn't have let that fight continue. So like he's changed and he knows that like you can't go by the book all the time. But then I don't know. It's like okay, I guess that's not really. I don't know. I don't know what his character fully is. Even now, I'm watching the current season, and I don't know. To me, he seems like a dummy because now he's like, what? Michael Burnham went against the rules? She never does that.
Right. Yeah. Saru is the Geordi mind rewrite currently. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a pretty good moment when he's just like, no, let him fight. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But it's not like that character trait like sticks around because he's basically just the Saru that we kind of know.
But they have Pike they go out of their way to have Pike like tell you that he's different,
Yeah, well, just for the cheap seats.
Yeah, but then like I don't know, I just don't see how it's paid off. But we're still going, I guess.
It's hard to this is an episode of TV written by people who grew up on Star Trek, referencing an episode that took place over 50 years ago. It's hard to not look at it through the lens of like, well, this is just like fanfic, basically, right? Like you're basically just. I mean, it's arguable that it's arguable that season 2 of Discovery is a lot of fan service and sort of fanfic.
Yeah,
but I think they do kind of get around that though. I mean, clearly there is an event like feel to it. We established that when we open in the way that we do, but I think it does make sense. Whether or not you think like the search for Spock and the signals and all these things into are any good as plot lines, fine. But when she gets him, he's got a brain problem, and we know that we can't just. What would you do usually? You'd have Tuvok mind meld with him, right? But that won't work because that'll screw Tuvok up as well, which it always happens anyway. So what do? We know some guys who are the most powerful telepaths, like in the galaxy. Let's take him to those guys, And And they fix him fine. And then we never really had this before, like this idea of there's got to be some payment for it. But then they ask like for a memory from her, and that leads us to the so the resolution, or at least not the resolution, the kind of midpoint of what the problem is between Burnham and Spock.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does move the story forward, like, I think, well in that way. Although when we see that scene, I know what they're trying to do. I think they're not the only people to try and do it, but they should not have had the adult actors mixed in with the child characters in that scene. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. It's not really
fair. It's not fair to the kid actors. Like, the kid actors are doing their best. They're kid acting, and then they're up against, like, Ethan Peck and Michael Burnham or Sonequa Martin Green, and it just doesn't. I understand, like, the mental landscape that they're operating in, but I think they should have just, like, shown the kid scene.
Yeah, I can see that. It worked all right for me. It was a little bit like I got like a yesteryear vibe from it, of like running off into the night.
And getting attacked by a creature, although no Ichaya to save you. I couldn't believe that they didn't try to, with all the CGI technology that they have, they didn't try to fit Ichaya in somewhere into Spock's childhood.
I would love to see that. Yeah, he's a cute.
I think that guy. We see a stuffed Sellet somewhere in Discovery,
Cowards.
But it's not the same. Not the same thing. Yeah.
I think the main story of it works all right for sure, definitely. And you actually, I was hung up on a line for a while, but you made me reconsider it. Like, where they break the illusion when they're going to the planet, and she's like, "Oh, we're through the looking glass now," and I was like, For a while, I was like, "You're not. I don't know. There's not a lot of weird stuff actually going on this planet, like, compared to what happened to Pike, where it's like, what's real, what's not." But I guess they do explore.
If there's a planet that's going to be the Alice in Wonderland planet, I guess it's Talos.
Yeah, it felt kind of forced, but I guess being forced to relive your traumatic memories, that's kind of like you've gone through the looking glass, I guess.
When they get to Talos, they of course meet Vina, who there's no easy way to bring her in. She just kind of shows up, and
she's like, "I like it here."
I mean, if she's the only human that lives on the planet, she's going to wander around and find them, I guess, and that's fine. But I liked the casting, which was kind of a surprise. I don't know if it was a secret, but I didn't know before I saw her. The casting of Melissa George, who I think in a lot of ways is something of a modern Susan Oliver. She's very talented. She's very pretty. She's been in a lot of different projects and films and TV and movies, and is a really solid actress. And I think that was a good choice.
Yeah, she felt like the same character, like, it worked for sure. So like her and Pike, they're in love, I guess. Was that what's going on?
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure that I ever really got that from the Cage, but this is maybe, to your point about is the Cage canon or is Menagerie canon? In Menagerie, he goes back to Talos to be well again, but also to specifically be with Vina. So if we are keeping that continuity straight, even though that will happen, years from when we see Pike now, then we have to set up that she's been in his mind and thinking about her. Okay.
Because it didn't, like, that was what was shocking about watching Back to Back was that didn't come across in the Cage. But like, I think the last time I watched, if memory serves, like, the Cage wasn't fresh in my mind, so it was like it just came off as more weird, like, seeing the way Pike originally acted against her, like. Yeah. He didn't seem like he disliked her, but it really didn't seem like he wanted anything to do with her,
Yeah.
So,
But maybe with time and reflection, he's like, maybe we shouldn't have left that girl on that planet back there.
Yeah, maybe there's, like, guilt there and stuff too.
Yeah, I think that they do make a good couple. I mean, as close as they can get. And I really enjoyed. I don't know. People have different opinions about how Discovery is sort of presented and staged, but there are some good staging decisions made on Discovery, and I really liked the sort of half and half Skype call that they do to Talos.
That was cool. That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
kind
often
of seeing them and
get, like, hung up on presentation issues on the show, but that wasn't one of them. I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, it was a good idea, a good way to conceptualize this kind of telepathic phone call they're having. Although I did see in this episode is not directed by, it was like TJ Scott, I think is his name. It's not like one of the normal directors on, or regular directors on Discovery, but a lot of camera moves, a lot of like tilting and rotating of the camera.
That bugs me. That's the presentation issue. Is I feel like the camera is always spinning in this show, and
to what effect, I'm not really sure what they're trying to accomplish.
I feel like the show always wants to have like a sense of either tension or like emotional weight, but like sometimes I feel like scenes are just if you play it straight with no music and like static shots and just let the actors do their job, like, you know, that you can convey so much more and it can be so powerful. But like I feel like every super emotional scene in the show, like the camera's always whipping around so fast, and it's just like slow down. Like it's, I don't know, there's not a lot of quiet, actually quiet moments on the show, I think.
Oh yeah, there's very few quiet moments in all of CBS Trek. And of course, that was the standard of the time, which was when the cage was made. Just, you know, point the camera, let the actors kind of do their thing. I noticed that I had a thought, which was in the old days, like on even like TNG and back in the 80s and 90s, the actors would move. So first of all, they were very comfortable with more static shots and not people moving. But if there was going to be movement, it would be Captain Picard would get up, he'd pull a shirt down, he'd get up, he'd walk around his desk, and then sit on his desk and be like, well, Mr. Data, we got to do this or that. Nowadays, the actors almost never move, and it's the camera that's moving all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's something that feeds itself, because when the camera's moving all the time, the actors can't move. So like when you have these bridge scenes,
right.
There's like 35 people on the bridge, and they're all standing on their like taped X, right? And then the camera is just like going all around, when you could just have a couple setups and people could like cross to another part of the bridge and say, well, what do you think about that, Arium, or whatever? And then we could just do it the old way. But the new way is everybody hold still. We're going to go full 360, you know, VR rig shot on you.
Yeah, it's nuts. There are actually some, because I don't think people give classic Trek enough credit sometimes with like the direction. Like there's some truly inspired like camera moves and stuff like that in shots in like TNG or something, where it's like, it's holding on a static shot, actors are talking, it's maybe behind something, they move to the part of the room, and in the same take, the camera will pan around it and come to a new shot, and it's just like, it's actually, I don't know, I'm just describing one that's in my head, but like, it's like, wow, that's like beautiful, and like, it really just it didn't take away from like the performances, and I don't know. Yeah, it's totally what you're saying, where it's like they've got to stand still because they got to track that movement if the camera's moving.
Or they'll stand in the middle of intersection, like of, you know, two corridors, and they'll just stand in the middle and then have their conversation while, you know, the camera moves around them, and then we see down the corridors and we see that people are walking and doing stuff, but like the principles like never move. And I think that's really strange.
I think a lesson a lot of people took over time was that like camera movements are impressive.
They're dynamic.
And if you can do a cool camera movement, like that's what's going to wow people. So like, you know, it's not the whole picture, I think, that's going on. But who am I to say? I'm just some random person watching the show, I guess. I couldn't I couldn't do better.
I'm just a person watching the show that doesn't enjoy it, but what do I know?
Like I'm trying not to be a crank. I liked they caught the vibe of Talos well. I liked the Skype call they had. I'm not a crank, I swear, but I can't help it sometimes.
I mean, we're in crank territory, I think, for sure. There is a couple other little loose ends. Of course, you've got the conflict with Hugh and Culber, where Hugh has returned from the dead and is trying to deal with it. And I remember not really thinking much of this at the time. Having seen it again, it's an interesting way to go because when you think about it, like our characters are like comic book characters. They do sort of disappear and return from the dead and are changed all the time. And so they actually wanted to slow down and see what that would be like for somebody. And but it doesn't like it doesn't work because they don't write it well enough. I think Wilson Cruz is doing his best to try to make it work.
They're both very good.
And they totally drop it by the end of the second season. And then of course we get into the third season and now like everybody feels this way. And like they're a whole linchpin sort of touchstone for the third season seems to be trauma. It would have been a big ask to try to push it to all the way to season 3 to allow him to experience it. But it just sort of plays out against nothing in the second season while all this other like Sturm and Drang and zipping around is going on.
Yeah. Like my thoughts of it were always that of course that experience that you see so much would be a traumatic experience and like it would be hard to deal with and like you would even it's something that like you can't even imagine. But like I feel like the show never let him articulate at any point like what it was or like what like they just never get there on like articulating how that feels. Like I get in this episode that maybe he has a hard time articulating that, but like I feel like they just never had an idea. They never even attempted to like explain it or like get at his actual feelings about it.
Yeah, and it took people change. They act differently when they're stressed or under trauma or grief, but they frame it as so aggressive and like broy, and it's just so not Culber's character that we've seen so far. Mm-hmm. And I guess I haven't gone back and tracked it to see if maybe they're literally going through the Kubler-Ross like steps, like maybe in another episode he's more depressed or he's bargaining or whatever. But all I remember is that he starts wearing black and he's mean to everybody.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you going somewhere with this? Or is this like just your edgy kind of, oh man, I died, I came back and now I'm all edgy.
I remember thinking,
I couldn't tell.
When I first watched it, I remember the scene and I thought it again, was where I was thinking, why is he so mad at Stamets? And then Stamets says, why are you mad at me? And then he goes, I don't know. And I'm like,
I don't know.
And like, I get that. I guess that answered my question, but I thought, like, and I understand that it's like sometimes you are angry, especially if you have to go through something like that. You're angry and you don't know why. And like the people, you lash out at like people who love you and stuff like that. But I never, like, I forgot where it goes. Like, to me, I don't know if there was a conclusion, but I just felt like it wasn't memorable. It didn't speak to anything, I don't know. I just don't think they ever got to anything with it. It was just like being upset and trauma. They were just like trauma, but like what's
trauma?
Where's it? It didn't go anywhere. It didn't. I don't know. It didn't satisfy me.
Yeah. Something else that was unsatisfying to me, although I guess they did all the work and put the work in, is the eventual revelation that happens, I think, next episode, of Ariam being the traitor. She's got the control program in her. And I think it's in a TNG episode, this would have been like A or maybe B story, but there's so much going on that we lose this. But I like the idea of Ariam taking advantage of the fact that they have a former traitor on board so that Tyler just gets blamed for all the things that she's like clearly doing out in the open. Like that, I think that was a good sort of angle. But it's just sort of buried until the end because we've got to do all this other stuff and see Michael and Spock as kids, and we've got all this other stuff that we've got to do service to. This episode is 55 minutes long. Oh my god,
they're so long, but like, okay, yeah, never mind. I shouldn't say it, man.
If you don't have anything nice to say,
I remember when she went, when that character died or whatever, and I was like, oh, I guess she's dead. Like, I don't know. Didn't feel anything.
Turn her off and turn her back on again.
Did you try that?
I don't know if they've tried that, but
maybe if they had decided to give her some episodes where learn about her.
I also was reminded of, I feel like in season 3, they've had this egregious practice of continuing to, look, everybody gets their reaction shot, but they keep going to Lieutenant Nilsson, the blonde woman that used to play Ariam, who has really no lines and no character to speak of, but they keep trying to like make Nilsson happen, and it's not going to happen. And they didn't start in the 3rd season. They're doing it in this episode too. She's like, they keep cutting to her like she's going to have something to say, and she doesn't say anything. So I don't know what they've got planned for this character. I don't know why they keep doing this.
That's what I think with a lot of the bridge crew is they're going somewhere now with some of them, but like they're always showing them. But I'm like, who are these people? You know, like.
Yeah, they want to have it both ways because people go, yeah, oh, you think that like Sulu had a character back in TOS? He didn't. It's like, I know he didn't have a character, but they didn't like always cut to him like he was going to say something. And he would say something. He would have a comment or he'd have a quip or something like that. Or he'd go fight a samurai or something like that. Like he was there for a reason, but they kind of it's like they want to keep in our minds, remember, like Nilsson exists. Remember that Bryce and Reese, or Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, like they exist.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, show, then pay it off. Like, do something.
It's clear. Yeah, it's clearly different. Like with even some of these, like Chekhov or whatever, you get little moments, you know, and like you get something. But like, I feel like, there's just like one guy. He's on the bridge crew in Discovery, but like, and he's been there forever. And like, I can't think of a single moment with him other than him looking at something in wonderment like he's a kid at space camp. Like, I guess that's all their characters, is that they're all just like pleased as pie to be in space. And like, wow, it's pretty cool. That's their.
I love that space camp has become the touchstone for this show.
Yep. I'm sticking with it. Yeah. That's most of the characters to me, is like their only bits of build up are just them going like, wow, like, tell me something else.
Wow, I got a new badge I can play with.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're just crapping on Discovery now, so
I'm sorry. I know. On. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's only natural. Something that makes Trek is the technology of the future. It facilitates what the characters are doing, but just as often, as in the case of Ariam, is the complication that they're dealing with. So in every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies. We add what we get to the non-Trek media, or in this case, I guess, the earlier Trek media. We subtract it from the Trek episode and see how each would be different, and we call it a technological exchange. And I thought that what we would do is, since some of these technologies don't exist in the 23rd century, we could hopefully get one that doesn't exist in the cage, and we'll add it to the cage, see how the cage changes, and then we'll just, of course, take it away from Discovery, although that's even farther in the past. Does that make any sense? It's still farther. They've got an advantage on them. They're ahead of them. They've got holograms. They got stuff that the old Pike Enterprise doesn't have. So our list is phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drive, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And rolling on my random number selecting device, the number I got is 4 transporters. So,
right. You know, when they transport in the cage, it feels like a really big deal. Like just the way it's shot.
Oh yeah. That was transporters were Herb Solo's idea, because he's like, you guys want to build this shuttlecraft, you want to have like the shuttlecraft fly down to the planet every week. That means we have to show it coming out of the thing. We can't reuse shots because the planet can't be green every week. It's got to be different colors. So what if they we'll come up with this effect and they just beam down to a planet? That way, no shuttle sequence.
Yeah, it really, like, I think it takes a little bit longer than you're used to, but it really has some weight to it where it's like, whoa, they're transporting down to this planet.
Let's say that they have the more sophisticated transporters of a later Star Trek era.
I mean, you can get the badge teleporters.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
From Discovery. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The 33rd season of Discovery. There you go. The 32nd season. Yeah. Or century.
Yeah.
Because, in Enterprise, it's like we've got them, but we're scared to use them, and we're probably not going to use them if we have a chance or a choice because you don't want to get leaves stuck in your body or whatever happens to that one.
By the time you get to the cage, it's it's okay, but it takes a little bit too long. It's like a loading screen.
Yeah, it takes two guys, and they're both wearing sweaty jumpsuits to beam you down. To
they're giving it everything they can to teleport you down to the planet.
But by the time of Voyager, people are just beaming into each other's quarters to hang out, and stuff like that. They've got it mastered. So.
And then boom, Discovery, you're zipping around.
Something that we don't really talk about or see much is sensors in the world of the cage, because even as they're finding the original colony and the crashed ship of the Columbia, they're doing it by visual reference, and there's no real mention to powerful sensors. I think they have aerial photography, and they probably have some sensors, but the doctor makes a point at one point where he's like, we don't know. We don't know if what we're seeing is real. We don't know if we're having any effect. I love the fact that they get this huge laser cannon out and they just hit the elevator door really hard. And they're like, is it working? And he's like, we have no way to know. And then as soon as the illusions are gone at the end of the episode, they blew a huge hole through the elevator, and clearly it just kept going. And they had totally destroyed the thing, but there's just no way to know.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that little detail.
So maybe they could use sensors assuming that the Telosians couldn't cloud their perceptions, to find Pike, in the facility, and then just beam him out of there, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe they could trick the sensors with their mind? Can they do that? Because, I guess when they were in the shuttlecraft in Discovery, they thought they were getting sucked into a black hole, right?
Yeah, when you think about it, everything is your mind, though, right? So, the collision warning is going off, the loss of structural integrity is being shown on the screen, but since you are seeing things with your mind...
shoot, you got me.
You're seeing that, yeah. If they had data, data would be like, I do not know what's wrong. There's no black hole there.
Yeah.
Or there is no black hole.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. You just gotta always have a data on board. Maddox was up. He was right. You need to get a data everywhere.
Everybody's gotta have a data, yeah.
You really blew my mind there with everything is your mind.
Well, I mean, it is. That's why these guys are that's why they put a death penalty on going back to this planet, because these guys can literally do anything. They can make you see and believe and feel anything. Which wonders why, Pike brings that up in the episode. We're just going to leave transporters behind. Pike brings that up in the episode. He's like, if you guys want me to eat, why don't you just make me have a powerful desire to eat or whatever. And I think that's where he gets the idea that there are certain emotions, it's never really all that clear, that they are uncomfortable with dealing with or are unable to deal with. But clearly being the fear of crashing into a black hole is not one of those emotions.
Oh yeah, it's fear. Fear is apparently not one. They're okay with fear.
It's interesting then too that they would want to view that memory between Michael and Spock. And maybe it's part of, here's my headcanon, maybe it's part of an emotional rehabilitation for them. Having encountered Pike in the Enterprise and sort of learned a lesson from him as he did from them, maybe they're now trying to wean themselves back onto the full spectrum of emotion instead of just, because I imagine, we see them put Pike in all these fantasy situations, but I imagine that they have fantasy situations as well. Until somebody shows up, they're probably just playing basketball at the All-Star game or something.
Yeah, I guess
in their minds.
I guess with some of the discrepancies there, I guess I'm just choosing to believe that the cage was a life-changing event for everyone involved.
Everybody involved.
I mean, that maybe, I guess if we didn't have to touch it, catch back in with Tyler and Stamets and whatever, maybe you could have explored that more. How are the Telosians different, or what led to them? Because they do seem a little bit different. They don't seem I don't know. Are they still capturing things and breeding them? Do they say that? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I could totally see like that they're like, well, we don't do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
When Pike goes back and and the Enterprise goes back in the menagerie, they don't really interact with them at all. It's just to bring Pike back, and we don't. It's all reused footage, but we don't have any indication that the Talosians are doing anything all that different. But who knows? Maybe they are.
Yeah, because like they're like asking for permission,
Yeah, well, I mean, they kind of hijack the Enterprise, but yeah, they or through Spock they do, but yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. They seem nicer. They seem nicer.
Yeah. Now they'll just insistently ask to borrow your lawnmower instead of just outright stealing it. Well, if we tried to take transporters out of the world of Star Trek Discovery in Season 2, what would we have then if memory serves?
In this episode, I don't know.
Does anybody get beamed in
There's
this
not
episode?
a lot of beaming. Their ship's landing,
Right at the end, there is a beaming situation. I think it would complicate the end of the episode because then you couldn't have the beaming fake out with the Section 31 ship.
That was good.
Which they totally hand wave because, sure, like we said before, your mind is everything you've got. So I guess the Talosians are hiding. They're making everybody not see the light that says a shuttle is coming up from the planet on the Section 31 ship.
I buy that.
Okay, well, there you go. So it would be complicated because we know that a shuttle's coming up because there are no transporters. So, I still can't remember his name. Don't really care. Section 31 guy's like, okay, well, fly your shuttle up to us now. So we're all looking for a shuttle, but the Talosians would have to like hide the real shuttle and then make like a different shuttle that would then dock with quote unquote dock with the, or actually I guess they wouldn't have to do anything at all. It'd just be a totally fake shuttle. Nothing docks. They either come aboard or they don't. And then the real shuttle docks with Discovery and Discovery just flies away.
They could do anything though. Like they don't even.
Yeah. Why didn't they send the Section 31 crew to hell? Everybody's in hell. Nobody can do anything.
They could have just made them all go to sleep, like they could do anything.
Yeah, they could have done that too. Yeah,
I guess. Well, because they knew that this was for the viewers at home watching on CBS All Access. They knew we got to have it's more entertaining this way because that made for a good moment.
Yeah, I guess it did.
They just like to have fun. The Talosians they like tricks. What if that was they're real pranksters?
That's their new thing, yeah.
Well,
and because they can project their telepathy across like light years and vast distances, they're just playing like random pranks on people from other planets. Like they're just somebody's just. I knew that door was open. It's closed now. Didn't I fold this laundry already?
We need to avoid what region of space is now known as the
goofy
Kutcher region. You get punked in this area of space.
Yeah. the Kutcher expanse. Stay out of there. Penalty of death.
I would love to see. I think of all the like spin-off shows that they could do for CBS All Access. I think a space-based prank show would be pretty good.
Yeah. We told this bullion that this was slightly rotten meat, but it turns out it's totally fresh meat. Let's watch.
We swapped Worf and Barclay's quarters.
Yeah, we put that spike glove in Worf's bed. Let's watch him go to sleep. Ooh,
it's still got the poison.
Oh no. It's hard to compare not only a franchise with a franchise, but like literally a show with basically the same show.
Yeah.
Or the show that inspired it.
In many ways,
I think we pulled it off okay. Well, let's tell people what's coming up on the next episode of Backtrekking.
Well, for the next episode, this is going to be kind of similar to one we did recently, I believe. We're going down the old route of sports. Everyone loves sports, right? I guess. We're going to be watching the show Fame, which I've never seen. I don't know anything about Fame. I think I know the theme song, right? It's kind of an iconic theme song. But anyways, there's an episode of that called The Old Ball Game. And that is going to tie into Take Me Out to the Holosuites from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, it's a really weird and interesting story. The connection between these two episodes, and it involves Ira Stephen Bear, the blue-bearded father of DS9 in a lot of ways, or at least wacky uncle of DS9.
It's a great way to describe it.
And so, we'll be talking about that on the next episode. But for this episode, we're all through. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, tell a friend. You can follow us at Backtrekking on Twitter, and tell us what you think we should look at future episodes. We're always looking for suggestions of media that inspired episodes of Star Trek. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
You go follow me on Twitter. I'm at Gooey Fame, and check out all the stuff I post there.
Awesome. And I'm at KA1IBAN on Twitter, and you can find all the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that is it for us. We will see you soon, and until then, keep on trekking.